Hey everyone, welcome to the Fable for HR webinar. We'll get going in a few minutes here. To kick things off, I want to make these webinars as interactive as possible. And so I want people to be able to ask questions. And so if you have anything you're looking forward to hearing about, any questions you have coming in, if you just want to try posting a comment right inside the comments, I can see those stream in. I'd also love to hear where everyone is joining from, city, state, country, and get a sense of where the crowd is calling in from. All right, we have some people from New York, Texas, Connecticut, Houston, San Francisco, Paris, okay. San Francisco, Chicago, South Africa, I like that. Cape Town, Hawaii, Brazil. All right, we got an international audience. I like it. It is 97 degrees in New York City today. It's extremely hot. India, Paraguay. Thanks for joining, everyone. So yeah, I'd love to hear, what do people want to talk about? We're obviously going to be talking about Fable and what the model is good for. I'll also spend a lot of time talking about how expensive it is, which is the main reason not to use Fable. But any questions or any topics that are top of mind for people, please just post them in the chat and we'll answer questions throughout, as well as at the end, we have a dedicated Q&A session. And we'll kick this off in about 2 minutes, we'll get going. Some from Afghanistan, some from Boston. For the people just joining, everyone's just entering where they're calling in from. And if they have any questions or topics they want to hear about as I go through this webinar, definitely post them in there. Yeah, some questions about cost, which we'll certainly be talking about. Questions about the model names, why they're weird. I don't have the answers there, but we'll certainly talk through the different models that are available. Dubai, Australia. Awesome. Okay. Nicole, should we kick this off?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So today we're going to be talking about Claude Fable, specifically for some HR use cases. We're going to do 2 live builds, kind of build 2 different applications throughout this webinar. One of the things with Fable that makes it difficult to show in a webinar is it's very slow, but we'll do the best we can. So Fable was released about 2 weeks ago, and it's the best model that's available, although OpenAI might disagree with that. And so throughout this webinar, we'll talk about what's it good for and some of the things that you should be thinking about. Before jumping in there, I want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Max Shaw, the founder of Windmill, and I'm joined by Nicole, who leads growth here. We've done a bunch of webinars before. Some of those are a little bit more beginner topics. This one's going to be relatively advanced because we're going to be talking about where Fable's good, and so we're going to be talking about different models and strengths and weaknesses. But I would encourage everyone to check out our previous webinars. Before we jump into the Fable content, quick overview of what Windmill is. So Windmill, we released our AI Performance View product last November, and the response from customers has been amazing. And the main thing that we're able to do is we're able to take the performance review process from usually taking 3 to 5 hours down to about 10 minutes. And more importantly, using our product, about 93% of individuals who run a cycle with Windmill say it's the best cycle they've ever run. And this applies to both individuals as well as to managers. And really the secret sauce of what we're able to do is 2 pieces. First, we build this context graph for your employees. So Windmill already knows about everything that's going on. So you're not starting from scratch. And then we use AI to help reason over it to make this process much, much simpler. For anyone who's gone through a performance review cycle where the first question is, what'd you get done this year? And you're trying to remember all those different pieces, that's what Windmill solves for you. So that's the end of the discussion about Windmill. Let's talk about Fable.
One more thing, Max, I'll just jump in there. I'm sending a link in the chat for people who are interested in learning more about Windmill. That'll be pinned, and we do have this QR code on the upper left-hand side as well that if you scan it, will take you to our website.
Awesome. So there's a bunch of stuff coming out. It's really hard to keep up, which is probably a reason why a lot of people joined the webinar. We're going to be talking about Fable today. I'm also going to be spending some time talking about Claude Tag. This was another feature they released, and one of the builds we do is all going to be focused about Claude Tag. So with that, we're going to end the slides, and let's go through some things. So this is our channel on YouTube if you're interested in some of our old webinars. Nicole also sent this cheat sheet out. We can drop a link to this in the webinar as well. This is awesome and has a bunch of the stuff we're going to go through. So why are people obsessed with Fable? So as these models increasingly get better, it's hard to actually know which is better than the other. I'm sure some people in the chat have tried Opus versus Sonnet, maybe versus Fable, and Nicole can put up a poll. I'm curious what models people are using. It can be hard if you're doing everyday tasks to really feel the difference. And in some cases, all you feel is just how fast they are. And this is where benchmarks come in. So when people say Fable's the best model available, this is usually what they're talking about. So this is artificial analysis. It's a website anyone can go to. And they have benchmarks that try to figure out intelligence of these different models. So Claude Fable is currently #1. Number 2 is GPT 5.6 Sol. So OpenAI released a new set of models, a new family of models last week as well. And these are really good as well. Then we see Grok, GLM 5.2, and some of the other models out there. So Fable is definitely either 1 or 2, depending on who you talk to, the best models available. Now, the issue with Fable is this. It's very expensive, right? You'll see the cost. This is cost per task, which is another benchmark that artificial analysis has. It is 2x or 3x the next model. It is 10x most of these other models that you're using every day. So it is extremely expensive to use, and you're not going to want to use it every single day. You're going to want to use it for targeted tasks. So we've got first poll up on the screen. To respond, just enter 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat. It seems like most people are using Opus daily. My quick recommendation is you should be using Opus or Sonnet as your daily model that you're using. So there's actually been a bunch of back and forth. I want to quickly go through the timeline of how this was released because I find it kind of interesting. So in April, Anthropic launched this thing called Project Glasswing, which is this new thing called Mythos, right? Which is Mythos preview. And they actually wanted to give every single company the ability to solve security issues before they released it. So they determined that this was a pretty big kind of risk to the public. And so they released this in kind of a beta that allowed certain organizations to take advantage of it to fix security holes. So this is the first time we saw a model kind of get released like this. So this was in April. 2 months later, they released Fable 5 to the world. And 3 days later, they had to roll it back. The government actually got involved and told them they had to put export controls on it. And so it got rolled back on June 12th. There was then 19 days of nothing, and then it came back out on the 26th. And then Fable 5 was fully released on July 1st. Anthropic said it was only going to be included in the general usage for like a week, but they keep on pushing it back. So interesting story here. You're starting to see models reach the level of intelligence where the government is stepping in to actually decide who can access it and what they can use it for. Now, this entire timeline is actually a pretty good example of how you can use Fable. So I made this right before the webinar. And this was the prompt I did. So I'm in Claude Cowork right here. And I said, can you generate an interactive timeline for the release of Fable, start with Mythos, and then show the key dates for Fable with the rollback? It then made this, then did a few back and forth. I asked it to make a visual HTML page. And so it made this visual, which is, I would say, is no other models, given that little of prompting details, could produce something as high quality. It still feels a little AI sloppy, but it's getting pretty good. And this is where I would say Fable excels, is for building end-to-end kind of websites and building end-to-end applications. And critically, you'll notice my prompt is very high level. The power of these bigger models is that you don't need to give it every little detail. It does a pretty good job just figuring stuff out. And so I think it did a pretty good job with this task with very little details. Increasingly, instead of creating slides or creating spreadsheets, I'm creating mini web applications to do things. And we're going to show an example of exactly how you can do that today. So quickly, here are the different model names. If you think about a plot between intelligence over here that I spelled wrong, but it's okay, and cost, Fable is right up here, right? It is the most expensive and the best model. Then you have kind of Opus right here. You then have Sonnet somewhere down here. Then you have Haiku down here, right? So Anthropic has 4 different models: Haiku, Sonnet, Opus, Fable, obviously based on the kind of the length of books or the length of text. And they get smarter and they get more expensive. OpenAI has just released their naming scheme, which is based on kind of planets. And you have Sol, which is really smart, but it's actually a lot cheaper than Fable. And then you have Terra, something like this. And then you have Luna, kind of something like this, right? So this is approximate, but it gives you an idea of kind of where these different models lie. Now, for most day-to-day HR work, you're not doing cutting-edge engineering develop. You're not trying to solve new biology problems or physics problems. You're generally going to be wanting to use Opus or Terra or Sonnet, maybe Sol. And the advantage of these models right here is kind of your sweet spot, is that they're faster and they're much cheaper. And you don't need this level of intelligence for most day-to-day tasks. Another thing that is starting to become a thing that you kind of can care about is this reasoning level. So every model has different reasoning levels. So I'll actually open Claude Cowork. And if I pick the model picker, you'll see Fable. They claim it's only available until July 19th. We'll see. They've pushed that date back twice now. This is included in kind of your everyday usage, and I'll talk more about usage in a little bit. Opus, Sonnet, and then Haiku. There's also this effort, right, which is the same thing as reasoning. It defaults to high, but there's low, medium, extra high, then max. And if I plot these on a graph, unsurprisingly, extra high is going to be the best, smartest, and the most expensive. And so there is a lot of configuration options now. You can pick a model, and then you can pick the reasoning level as well. For most day-to-day tasks, just use the default. I would pick Opus or Sonnet with the default reasoning level, but those are knobs you can turn. I'm curious for this group, is anyone started, and Nicole, we can put the poll up. OpenAI's latest models are really good, and they just released the new Codex app. Is anyone using that new Codex app, or has anyone tried it out? You can just type 1, 2, 3, or 4. Is anyone and OpenAI and Codex are the same thing? It's very confusing. Has anyone been using that? Let's see. I assume most people who join this webinar are Claude people, or engineers. So we have some engineers using Codex. Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out Codex. I would say the OpenAI models are almost as smart and much, much cheaper. So definitely worthwhile checking out. It seems like you obviously will need permissions from your organization, but it does seem like about 70% of this audience is using Claude as their kind of day-to-day driver. So the big reason not to use Fable is the price. So here is the pricing of these different models. They are measured with input and output tokens. You can see Fable's twice as expensive as Opus. Opus is essentially twice as expensive as Sonnet, and Sonnet's twice as expensive as Haiku. So if you're using the API, this is what you're paying, but most people here are probably on a team plan or on some sort of one of these individual plans. And these have included usage in them that you're going to want. If you're going to be experimenting with Fable, you have to monitor your usage. So if I go to Claude, and if I go to customize, and I go to usage, this is what you need to keep track of. So my current session resets in 33 minutes. I think these are every like 5 hours, and I've used half of my tokens. And then specifically, there's its own limit for Fable, and I'm at 45% usage, and that's resetting next Tuesday. And so this reset yesterday, I'm already halfway through my usage. I will blow through this well before it resets. So I'm very careful about when I use Fable. So if you want to start playing with Fable, check out your usage and monitor this. As we go throughout this webinar, we can see how these bars change. But it's very expensive and it eats through your usage really quickly. And if you don't, and if you go over your usage, you could get usage-based billing, which is extremely expensive. Has anyone burnt a bunch of money? I'm curious in the comments. Has anyone just like racked up a huge bill? It's very easy to do if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, and I think one question we actually haven't asked yet is if people have tried Claude Fable 5 or not. Have people used it before, or are you joining this webinar curious to learn more and make a decision about if you should use it or not?
And we actually have a question here. I got a few likes. I'll just put it on the screen. I think it's interesting. Do you think what happened with Claude Design and Figma can happen with HRMS, ATS, and similar HR tools? So what happened, there is definitely a concern from a lot of companies that you connect your tools to Claude or OpenAI, and then they steal your ideas, and then they release a duplicate app. I think this will continue to happen. Microsoft, Satya Nadella actually kind of released a statement about this a few days ago. We can send out that blog post. And so this is definitely a concern. On the flip side, I think there's a lot of pressure for every single application. I know we feel this at Windmill, to open up everything so that you can use it with your favorite kind of agent tools. So here at Windmill, our philosophy is everything is completely open, and I'm okay with this risk. Other companies have different viewpoints. I know a lot of the HRISs keep things a lot more locked down. They don't have open APIs. They might not have MCP servers. My recommendation would be to pick tools that are open, that have MCP tools and have APIs today, so that you can use them inside of Claude or OpenAI. But this certainly will be an interesting thing to happen. I think different companies will have a different strategy here. It's something I think a lot about running an application company. But our philosophy is to be open. We think that's the winning strategy for right now. Okay, so pricing, this is comparing Anthropic's models to OpenAI's models. And you can see, again, the pricing. So you can see Fable 5 is by far the most expensive, then Sol, then Opus. And Sol's intelligence is pretty much the same as Fable. So you can see it's about half the cost of Fable. And so if I hear just like an expected workload, you can see these cost numbers are dramatically different depending on the model you're picking. Now, this page right here, as you probably could have guessed, is another example of how I used Fable. So this was the prompt. Can you create an interactive HTML page that showcases the price of the different Anthropic models? And it went through and did a bunch of stuff. There was one bug. I asked it to fix it, and it created this HTML page, which I'm showing you right now. So these little HTML pages, I would say, is probably my #1 tip in where Fable's really good, is it just makes a lot of good decisions. I didn't tell how to lay out the page. I didn't give really any details. I didn't tell it a color scheme. It just figured it all out. And so it's a great way of understanding information for sharing information with your team. So with that, let's jump into some live demos. If there's any questions on pricing or anything, I will hop in to jump on those. But okay, so let's jump into some live demos. So the first demo we're going to show is inside of Claude Cowork. So they actually redid the app design a little bit. There used to be 3 tabs over here: Home, or Chat, Cowork, and Code. They've combined these both into Home, and now there's Chat and Cowork. So it's a different UI. All my demos today, I'm going to be using Cowork. The big difference between Cowork and chat is Cowork has access to your local computer. So the first thing we're going to build today, I'll actually just show this, is this talent review concept. So let's imagine you have a 10-person executive team who's trying to do kind of like a monthly talent review where there's 100 people in the org and they want to give everyone a 1 through 10 rating to kind of do things like understand compensation, understand who are the people they really have to retain, who are the people who maybe they need something needs to change or aren't performing as well. I'm curious if anyone does these kind of monthly talent reviews. I'm seeing them become more and more popular. Super lightweight, not full performance review cycles, just a quick rating of every employee, and you can kind of track how that changes over time. So we're going to build this right now. So I actually have, ahead of time, I created this folder. We're going to let it use it. I'm actually just going to use Opus for now. So you can see I have Opus here. And when I do my prompting, I like to do voice prompting, especially when I'm not distracting other people in the audience. So I'll say something like, can you give me a quick overview of the different files inside of this folder? Now, the reason why voice prompting is a good approach and why a lot of people recommend it is that it allows you generally a lot more verbose. You speak a lot more about your reasoning and your rationale when you use your voice rather than when you're typing. And these models work a lot better the more information you give them, the more context you give them. So if you haven't tried, I would definitely recommend people try voice prompting. I use an app called Whisperflow, which is popular. There's like 1 million of these. Give it a shot, especially if you're not distracting your people around you. It is very helpful, and I promise you will get better results. Okay. So this is demo data. I have a bunch of information in here. You can imagine I pulled this all from my HRIS, pulled it from a bunch of stuff from my ATS. People can see this. A bunch of information from like GitHub stats, Salesforce stats, Zendesk stats, peer feedback, right? So I pulled all this data together. And one of the most common things I would see people do is they would do this kind of talent review on a spreadsheet. Here, Kimberly agrees. Put this up here. Voice prompting. I wasn't making it up. It's a good technique. All right. So the old way I think a lot of people would do something like this, and I'll use Opus to do this, is I'll say something like, can you generate a single CSV that will help me do a talent review? I want to upload to Google Sheets and allow a team to collaborate on ratings 1 through 10. Combine all the columns together and then insert a blank column where I put the rating. And then can you ask me a few clarifying questions to make sure you understand what I want? This is my other tip. Tell the AI to ask you questions. It is voice prompting plus asking the AI to ask you questions are the two, I would say, highest leverage improvements you can make to prompting. That will give you much better results. And so it's going to ask me some questions. Let's say I want every column in here. We'll include both performance review cycles side by side. And we'll just do a single blank column for now. Stephanie's asking me to paste the prompts in here. I'm actually not going to do that. I don't think copying and pasting other people's prompts is that helpful these days. What I would recommend, because everyone has different nuances, everyone has different details. I'm going to recommend try just speaking to an application, explaining what you want, telling it to ask you questions, and explaining any of the nuance about your specific situation. You'll get much better results than just copying and pasting my prompts into your system. But there it is if you want to look at it, but it's all pretty basic. Okay, so now it's working on this. I'm going to jump ahead because I don't want to wait for that. And so like this is, you'll probably end up with something like this. And so if I go here, we'll put rating right here, right? And so I can imagine, I'm sure everyone's done something similar where you sit down on a Zoom or you share this screen, share this document with a bunch of people, and you ask them to put a rating 1 through 10, right? And maybe you talk through and you go 4, 2, 3, right? 6, and then you're like kind of scrolling over to try to see all this stuff. There's so much information here. Like we have last promotion, we have trends, we have all these compensation data, which is all over here. It's just a very hard way to visualize all this data. And there really isn't a good way to visualize all this information on a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet is really just not the best way to do this kind of things. And I'm increasingly using spreadsheets less and less. And more, I'm just building mini applications. So this is a perfect use case for Fable. So we're going to start over. So this worked. You can see what it did. I know my screen's a little zoomed in. It created this thing. It merged all the data together, which is great, right? There was a bunch of different data sets. Now it's all merged together. So it's going to start over. And this time we're going to use Fable. Claude does have this built-in microphone as well that you could use. We're in the same folder. So this is co-work. So I'm using a folder. And let's prompt it again. Can you create an interactive HTML dashboard that helps facilitate a talent review? I want this to be an interactive web app using the best libraries available. You should be able to see all the employees, easily slice and dice and drill into individual employees. You should be able to add and remove any columns you want. The purpose of the talent review is to give everyone a rating 1 through 10 and make this easy to use and intuitive and have a pretty high information density. And then we could say, make this in dark mode. Cool. I'm using Fable, and the effort I'm using is high. So before I kick this off, let's actually go to settings. You can see my usage. I'm at 45% Fable usage, and this resets again in a week. And everyone will have different amounts they can use based on the plan you're on. So we're going to send that off. Now it's going to work. It's probably going to take 15 minutes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And this is where the way you use Fable is very different than other models. I'm not going to wait here and watch it work. I'm going to go do something else. And I will show you, I did this right before. I'll show you what it came up with. And then we'll come back to this at the end of the webinar and see. So this is what came up with. I didn't tell it in this one to use dark mode. But this is instead of a spreadsheet, it built this. We have these nice drop downs, right? Really cool. I can filter super easily. Let me see engineering. Let me see customer operations. Let me see customer success. I can filter by manager, by track, by level, by retention risk. You can filter ones that need discussion. We get this real time. People can see this real time distribution. I can change columns. Look at all those columns I have. So I could say, hey, I don't want this stuff. I specifically want to look at deals won, deals lost, deals influenced. Now we see just this information here. We could sort by the different things, right? We don't have some data there. And then importantly, I can drill in, right? This is a full application. It's not just a spreadsheet. So we can see the ratings. I'm going to give it I'll give it a 9. I have keyboard shortcuts. This is the kind of stuff that I think Fable does that other models do not. I can click 1, 2, 3, 4. I can just click numbers. I didn't ask for that. It just built it in. We have a talent snapshot. We have compensation with this nice graphic. Here are the previous manager reviews. Here's the peer feedback. All of this information right here. I can click through people. And so you can really see how this is so much more helpful than that traditional spreadsheet. And this is very easy to do. You just kind of give it a quick prompt and it will build this out. Now, there's a good question here. Can you share the HTML in a safe way with other managers? How do you save this for future reference? So the way I built this one is that I made it so that you export. So the issue right now with a lot of this approach, I would say, is making it work collaboratively, where it's a bunch of people working together, is pretty difficult. And this is probably where you'd have to involve engineering, right? So maybe you get something up and running, but it's probably only going to be working for yourself. I haven't deployed this. So this is a single HTML file. So actually, if I go here, you'll see, let me just go, I think. this is the HTML file right here. I know it's really hard to see, but I could send this HTML file to someone else, but it's just local on my computer. So the way you would have to use this right now is you could send this application to other people. Everyone could do their rankings. You then export the CSV, and then everyone shares the CSVs. So this is where I think it's pretty difficult. It's pretty easy to build an application on your computer. It becomes a lot more difficult if you want to try to deploy that and have a bunch of people use it collaboratively. Obviously, this is where I'd plug something like Windmill. But also you could try to involve your engineering team to try to get something that could be collaborative and work together. But if you're just working on it to your own, you could build this, everyone exports their CSVs, and then you reconcile from there. Another question, what is the sheet you uploaded? What columns were there initially for us to compare? So this is what Fable-built, right? All the different columns you can actually see here. There's a million different data points because I have productivity data, I have HRIS data, I have comp data, all these different things. If I go back, this is what that initial Opus thing built. And so it's like, how many columns is this? It's a million columns. It's the exact same data set. It is just from a visualization perspective, you can see how much harder this is to use than what Fable was able to produce in that web app. I did another one actually before that I thought was pretty interesting. No. So there's a question around what information we fed into this. So let me actually show you. So here's what was in the folder. So I combined a bunch of different information. So I have information from the core HRIS, compensation, history, bands, promo. I have information from performance reviews, so manager reviews, review cycles, talent snapshot, goals and development. I have all the 360 feedback. I have the information from the ATS. So what was the scoring when we hired them? And then we have the system tools. So here's all the GitHub stats and linear stats and Salesforce stats and Zendesk stats. So that's everything I fed in. You could imagine compiling all this information is pretty difficult. This is definitely something Windmill makes easier. But I had all these CSVs and then I had Opus join them all together. And yes, this was all in the Claude project. So if I go back to this, when I go to create a new co-work chat, I am specifically choosing the project, which is right here. And that's how it had all the information it had access to. So that's an example of a quick, instead of a spreadsheet, building a full interactive web apps. There was a question, do you have MCP connectors for all the platforms you extracted the data? Some of these platforms do have MCP, some of them don't. I'm using dummy data here right now. What we essentially just did is kind of built a mini context graph. Getting all the data together is relatively time consuming. I'm not going to do it on this webinar. Some of them have MCPs. Most HRISs do not have MCPs right now for whatever reason. I think a few do. I know most of them still do not. You can use an MCP, you could download a CSV, you could try to call an API. You just need to get all the data into a folder on your computer, and then AI can let you work through it. This is a very good question, and a question that comes up pretty much on every webinar. What has been your experience working with legal and privacy and creating enterprise production solutions that involve this level of PII? So as you can imagine, in this spreadsheet, I have a lot of very sensitive information. And so this is where you need to be very careful about who has access to which information. And I would separate out the concept of the AI risk for this information versus just general access controls. So everything I'm doing here is local. And so let's imagine I had access to be able to download all the compensation for every single employee. I had access to be able to download all the GitHub stats, all the stuff from the HRIS. I don't think anyone would if you have all that access and you built a spreadsheet locally, I don't think like a few years ago, I think people would be like, yeah, of course you can do that. You had access to all that data. And that's essentially all we're using AI here. So there's no really increased risk using AI here, I wouldn't say. We are sending the data to these AI model providers, which some people are not comfortable with. So that's up to you. I would highly recommend you turn on 0-day retention, which means the models do not save this data. One nuance of Fable is you can't turn that on, which I'm not going to go through right now. But this is really best for you to work through with your internal legal and security teams to make sure that you set it up in a comfortable way. I'm using all dummy data right here, but it is obviously something you want to keep in mind and pay attention to. So let me show one other application that I built. This was a compensation planning tool. And I'll show you the prompt here. Really simple. Just a paragraph prompt right here. If anyone can read that, I'll zoom in. Can you build a compensation planning app? I want to see where everyone stands. I fed in all the same data, but this one was focused more on compensation planning. And it built me this. You can see it really likes this yellow scheme for branding. I don't know why it defaults to that, but you can certainly prompt it to do something different. And again, this is all fake data, but we can see where everyone stands against their band. This is the kind of thing that in a spreadsheet's much harder to visualize. I can also drill in and we get all this information. I didn't tell it to build any of this stuff. I just gave the high level rationale of what I kind of want and it just figured it out. And this is where Fable's really good. You can also, I also added it to allow you to adjust the framework. So here are the different frameworks. This was all default data, but if I wanted to change any of this information, all this stuff will update on the fly. So I can import or export or change any of this. So another example of a quick application that Fable was able to spin up. So that's probably my recommended use case for Fable is building these little mini applications. In general, for HR stuff, I don't think you need to use it. I think the existing models are plenty good. If we go back to customize and usage, you're really going to want to keep a track of all this information. You can also do this at an organizational level if you are an admin. So that's my Claude Fable demo. The other demo I want to go through is Claude Tag. This one's pretty different, but I actually think it's really cool. So the concept here is an HR help bot. So we're always getting bombarded with questions over and over and over again. The same questions come through. And so let's say we want to build a Slack channel where anyone can ask a question. So we're actually going to do that right now using Claude Tag. So I've created this channel called Help HR. I'm going to move pretty quickly through this setup, but I'm going to do it live because I like doing live demos of how we can set up Claude Tag inside of this Slack channel to start answering questions. To set the stage, imagine I have a Notion. So Notion's like a Google Doc, if anyone hasn't used it. I have this Notion database that has all the information that people ask about. This is just fake data again, but employee handbook, device and acceptable use policy, code and conduct, right? So I have some basic information here, and I want people to be able to ask questions against this. So this is a good use case for Claude Tag. I'm curious, has anyone used Claude Tag? Post a comment if you have. So let's set up Claude Tag. It's very clunky to set up. This is a brand new product, but it's kind of cool. So I am in Anthropic Claude organizational settings. And just so people, I'll just quickly, Claude. This was released on June 23rd, so about 4 weeks ago. It essentially allows you to tag Claude in the channel. Okay. So I've set up this Slack channel called Help HR. And now I see Claude Tag right here. I'm going to zoom in. And so the first thing I need to do is add the channel. So I'm going to click Add Channel. I'm going to take the channel ID and put that there. Help HR. And then I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to say at Claude. Hello. I got to add them to the channel. I said Claude, hello. You can see it's working. Nicole, is that big enough? Can people see that?
Yeah, I think this should be good.
Okay. So let's see if it works. Okay. It responded, hey, Max, what's up? So now Claude Tag is in the channel. If I ask a question like, Claude, what's the HR policy for travel? And George and Nicole, don't ask questions yet. This will not work. Give me 1 second. So right now, this is just general Claude. It doesn't have access to any information. And so it's a little slow, but it's not going to really understand our specific HR policy because it's not hooked up to anything. So I'll let that run. But what I want to do is add Notion access to this Claude Tag. So this is conceptually a little confusing, but Claude Tag, you can think of it, it's not an extension of me, it's not an extension of Nicole, it is its own thing, right? And so right now it doesn't have any access to anything. So I need to give it what's called an access bundle. These terminology is extremely confusing, but I will walk you through it. So we're gonna add an access bundle. So we're gonna create a new bundle. And what I'm gonna do, and I'm going to move quickly through this because it's boring, but I do want to show this live. So I'm going to connect Notion. And so I need a Notion API key. So inside of Notion, I go to Notion developers. I create a new connection. I'm going to create an access token, Claude Tag Demo. It's going to be installable for the Acme Corporation. I'm going to give it read-only access. So it cannot change information. All it can do is read information. And then I'm going to give it access to the content. So this is a Notion-specific integration. We've created it. I now copy this access token. And we connect. Let's see if it works. No. This is Help HR Bundle. Okay. So now it has access to Notion. And now I can give it some instructions. And I'm just going to copy and paste the prompt in I had from before. You are a Slack bot built by the HR team. All you can do is answer questions from Notion database. If it's not in Notion, then just refuse to answer. If someone asks you a question unrelated to HR, refuse to answer. If you can't answer, tag Max. That's what it's saying to do. And tag out Max. All right. So now, if we go back to Claude, let's see what it said here. So it said, I don't know, right? Because it didn't have access. Let's try this one again. All right. This is a live demo. We'll see if this works.
And while we're waiting for that, we did have one question about if this is a team function or if it's available for individuals as well.
So team function, it is, I think it's only for teams, I think right now. I'm not sure, Drew. I think it's only for teams. And does everyone see chats in Claude? Yes, this is a public channel. And for something like this is kind of by design. You want people to be able to see other questions people are asking. There's like a nice community aspect there. Let's see if it worked. All right, sweet. It's checking Notion. It's looking through Notion, so it's working. So yeah, the whole purpose of this is it's public inside of an organization. So it's very different than like talking to Claude locally. This is for kind of inside of a public place. And I was very deliberate to only give it Notion read-only access. I don't want anyone to be able to come in here and update the Notion thing because maybe only HR controls those documents. It's pretty slow. It's using Claude Opus. You can see that. Let's see if it works. If Nicole and Georgia, we want to ask some more questions here, we can see how well this works. And so you can see how other people can come in and tag Claude. It is going very slowly. I don't know why it's so slow, but okay, right. So I think it worked. It's a live demo, high risk. Okay, so I found it. There's no standalone travel policy in Notion, but business travel covered inside the expense reimbursement policy. So it pulled all this information. And if I open this up, you can see this is from the Notion document. It found this document. There's a question around, does it run off API billing? The answer is yes. They gave a bunch of organizations free usage, but it does run on API building. Would this work with Google Docs as well? This can work with any database, any collection of documents. You just need to hook up an API. The Google Docs integration is a little bit more tedious, I would say, but it could work off Google Docs. Another question, HR questions aren't the best things to allow publicly. Is there an app functionality where the user would be able to have the conversation with the same tag privileges within a private chat? So Claude Tag is really purpose-built to work in kind of public channels. I would not use Claude Tag for sensitive information or for like personal questions. You're going to want to set up like kind of more of a personal assistant type of thing there if people want to kind of share personal information. I don't think this is the best approach for that type of stuff. I would not recommend Claude Tag for that use case. There are other bot builders that can do a better job with that kind of stuff. I'll also plug Windmill's Windy agent, which can also handle that stuff privately as well. Claude Tag is really meant for kind of more public things. This could be a private channel, but it's meant for kind of stuff where you want a lot of people collaborating together. So Georgia asked, let's see, when is open enrollment? You can see it tagged me because it couldn't find the answer. What's our policy on remote work? There's no documented policy tagging a max shot answer. So I will say, this is where you can kind of make this. The whole point of Claude Tag is to be interactive. So I could say, you can work remotely on Fridays and the first Monday of every month. Super complicated. And so I can just jump in here and answer. And you can see Claude Tag @mentioned me because that's what I told Claude Tag to do. Another question, I have new engineers join the team tomorrow. Great, it answered this well. I pointed out some key people at the organization. And again, it's getting all this information from this page, let's go back. From this page right here. And from a privacy perspective, I was very careful to only give it Notion access to these public docs. This is like the public employee handbook. That's all it can read from. Here's another one. When's our next performance review cycle? Let's see what it says there. When is open enrollment? Okay. So Claude Tag is now working. Now anyone can ask questions. You could do this for new employee onboarding. You could just do this for general policy questions about travel. Anything you want to put in a document that you want people to ask questions about. This is like a pretty good approach for doing that. Now, one of the issues with a lot of these types of documents is they go stale. And so for this example, what's our policy on remote work? We didn't have that in there, so I forgot to add that. This other one, let's see if this one responds. I don't think this one will be able to answer as well. So if you are unable to, all right, so yeah, so I wasn't able to find this in Ask Max. I'll say the next cycle is in September. Forgot to answer. So, Emma just built a 9-box interactive in Fable. Love it. It is very good for building calibration grids. Okay, so next cycle is in September, so I forgot to enter. So you could imagine over time, a bunch of these unanswered questions get answered in Slack. But this is not the best place because this is like important information you want to save. So what you could do here, and Claude will learn. Stephanie's asking, like, is Claude going to learn? It kind of will learn, but I actually want to make sure this information is documented in Notion. Notion should be the source of truth. And so this is where I can do a pretty cool workflow, and I use a similar thing for a lot of different things. Is I can say, can you review, we don't need Fable for this. Opus is plenty fine. Can you review the help HR Slack channel? So now I'm in Claude Cowork. Now it's authenticated as myself. I'm not using Claude Tag anymore. It is reading through all the Slack messages.
While it does this, we do have a question about Claude Tag. Are there other ways that people can use it besides connecting it to their knowledge base, or is that the main purpose?
No, you can use it for anything. It's like very open-ended, which is why it's pretty powerful. You could, so we use it for like a lot of engineering tasks. We'll kick stuff off to Claude Tag. You could build like a version. Another one that I have built internally is one for recruiting, where I have it hooked up to our ATS and hooked up to calendars, and it helps coordinate recruiting and schedule and events like that. That one is only in a private channel that only certain people have access to. That one's not public. We also have one, you can also build one that does like general HR stuff like onboardings and offboardings and put it in a private channel. But the real power of Claude Tag is that it's where you want multiple people working with an agent together. It's meant to be collaborative. If you just want one-to-one, Claude Tag is not the right solution. You should just use your own Claude Cowork on your computer. Okay, so these are the questions it answered well. Here are the questions. Here are the gaps, right? Here are the gaps in the knowledge base. And I'm going to say, for the answers that I responded to, can you update Notion with the right information? Keep the knowledge base organized. You're talking to an LLM, don't worry about spelling stuff correctly. It doesn't matter. So it's going to update Notion so you can see how I responded to these two questions right here and right here. Claude is now going to update Notion. Let's see what it does. See if this works. Right. It is working. All right, so it's asking for permission. Oh, all right, so here it is. It created the remote work policy page. Employees may work remotely on Fridays. Employees may also work remotely the first Monday of every month, which is a very confusing policy, but that's what I said it was. And then what was the other one I was going to do? All right, allow for this task. It's working. The other one I was supposed to update was the performance cycle for September. So let's see. Oh, here it is. People, programs, performance review cycles. Here it is. Next cycle, upcoming September. So it's creating these pages on the fly. Now, I could have given it more information about like what exactly I want there, but you can see it just kind of did that. Now, the cool thing is I could say, can you run this every night at 9 p.m.? Update the knowledge base based on the latest questions and any answers. Only look at answers from myself. I'm in charge. Don't listen to other people. And so now what I'm doing is I'm creating a scheduled action that every night it's just going to review the Slack channel. And if there are any cases where I had to jump in to respond like this, Notion will automatically get updated. So now I never have to go back to Notion. I can just respond in Slack, make sure I stay on top. Anytime Claude Tag mentions me, I can just respond. And then I'll schedule this out. So if we go, now we have this nightly scheduled task that will run automatically every night at 9 p.m. and I never need to worry about it again. So that is how you can use Claude Tag to set up a public Slack channel where a lot of people can work with an agent on a specific thing. Pretty powerful. It's still very new. This stuff, I would not say is maybe fully ready at like big scale. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable rolling this out with like a 5,000 person company, but it's getting better faster, and I would definitely experiment with this kind of stuff. It's fun, and this is certainly part of the future of how all this stuff works together. So a question here, what about policies that update? Something that was correct a month ago is not necessarily correct now. This is a great point. So how do you solve for this? A few things. One is that you want to make sure, in whatever, like if you're doing something like this, that Claude Tag is hooked up to the source of truth. So for something like the performance review cycle, it's probably not the best to have that hooked up to a Notion doc with text. You probably should hook that up to your performance management tool. Like you should hook that up to Windmill or whatever you're using so that that is automatically up to date. And so like if you're using our agent, for example, that would automatically stay up to date. Otherwise, you need to make sure that that Notion doc stays up to date always, right? And so this is the same of like any kind of knowledge base or HR handbook or anything like that. You always want to make sure you keep it up to date because otherwise people, I'm sure everyone's dealt with it where people reference old information. So you need a process to keep stuff up to date, and one possible, hook it up to the official source so that you don't have to spend extra time keeping stuff up to date. That's a great question. Any other questions about this Claude Tag demo? Or actually any questions about everything I showed? That's the end of the content that I had. For the handbook in Notion, can you tell it to make versions? Sure, you can tell it to do it however you want to structure it. That's one of the benefits of Notion. It's very flexible. So if you wanted to version each thing, and then as changes get made, it goes to a new version, and then you release the new version when it's ready. You could do something. Like that. Can we have a Notion session next? I don't know if I'm going to do a Notion webinar, but it's interesting. I'm a big fan. Some of my co-founder Mark is sitting next to me, and he hates Notion. But some people like it, some people don't. But you can do all the same things in Google Docs. I just prefer Notion. Any other questions about, I guess, before we leave, let me just show the slide. Everyone always asks for the recording. Yes, we will send out. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I'm not showing the right slide. Hold up. Sorry. What am I doing? All right, this is the slide. Yeah, everyone always asks for the recording. We'll send out the recording. Don't worry. We'll share the cheat sheet as well, which is a bunch of helpful information. If you liked if you thought there was something interested, someone built a calibration grid, post about it, tag us. We'd love to hear what you liked, or if you didn't like the content, if you have suggestions about how I should probably talk more slowly, please send them in. We're always looking for feedback on how we can make these sessions better. Did you already speak to the token cost with Fable? I did. I spent a lot of time talking about it. It's very expensive. It's basically 2x Opus, which you can see here. In general, I would not use it. I would use it for very targeted applications. It's extremely expensive. But for building interactive little applications, that's the high-level use case I would recommend it's good for. But for most standard day-to-day work, it's way too expensive and slow. Any other questions about anything AI related?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Max. You know,
Yes.
We do these webinars almost every single month. There's always new things being released. What's your advice to people that are trying to stay up to date on every new feature that Anthropic is releasing and making decisions about what to try and how to try it?
Well, you could watch the webinars, but I would probably avoid. I don't think it's that important to stay up to date with like the latest news every single day. Stuff changes constantly. If you're on like social media, or on X, or on Threads, or on whatever, like there's constantly stuff changing. I don't think that's the best use of your time. I would spend time actually just trying to use the tools. Like, don't spend all your energy trying to stay on top of the news. Spend your energy trying to actually prompt and build stuff. Build a calibration grid, build a visual web app. You'll get much more value out of trying the tools than trying to just like stay on top of the news. And I don't know, you don't always need to be on the bleeding edge. Stuff is literally changing every week. The first launches of a lot of this stuff is like pretty buggy. I think it's much more important to try to use the tools in a very in-depth way. Force yourself to use AI for use cases that it might not work well for you. Discover the boundaries of where it works well and where it doesn't is more valuable than trying to stay on top of the news every single day because it's overwhelming. We got a question about where can you see the past webinars? I think the answer is YouTube. We have these amazing thumbnails, which you can see. Lassa and I did one 3 weeks ago. Here's one from a month ago. We have 2 months ago and 3 months ago. So most of these are still pretty relevant. They're obviously somewhat out of date, but I think a lot of the tips, and this beginner one, I go through prompting and context in a lot more depth. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, I just added a link to the YouTube channel in the comments section, and then it's also linked in the footer of the email that you receive after this webinar. So definitely feel free to check those out.
Someone asked about Codex. Codex is pretty good. People should check it out if they haven't. If people are only allowed to use OpenAI, check out the new Codex app. There's a lot you can do with it. They basically copied everything that Anthropic was doing with Cowork. They've called it Codex or ChatGPT for Work, I think it's called. There's some parts that are super confusing, but it is really powerful now. So, and the latest models from OpenAI are really good. If you go back to this, my day-to-day for all my engineering, I'm using GPT 5.6 Soul because it's as good as Fable, but it is half or less than half the cost. So this model is basically the same. If I actually go to, if I scroll down here, wait. There's a specific graph on, where is it? Yeah, so these are the capability indexes, they call it. AI, speech leaderboards. And if I go to strategy and ops, which is probably the closest to kind of some of the HR work, they put GPT 5.6 as the best model. So these 1, 2 are really close together. And GPT 5.6 Soul is much, much cheaper. So, but yeah, it's crazy. There's so many different models that you can pick and choose from. For most tasks, you don't need anywhere near this level of intelligence. Any other questions? I'll stay as long as we need to answer all the questions, but it seems like we have gotten to them all. Did I miss any, Nicole?
No, I think you covered them.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone again for coming. Really appreciate all the questions and comments throughout the webinar. Definitely give us a shout out if you found anything interesting. If you have follow-up questions, ping me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place to find me. And yeah, have a great rest of your Wednesday. And if you're near New York, try to stay cool and stay indoors. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.